Hi there, and welcome to the RevOps show, where we cut through the noise and get real about what it takes to accelerate revenue and lead with clarity. Doug and Jess dive into one of the toughest challenges in businesses, hiring the right salesperson. From ramp times and role clarity to interview red flags and what truly makes a great hire. This episode breaks down the art and science of building a sales team that actually sells. Let's get into it.
Jess.
Doug.
Jess, I don't know. I'm like conflicted.
What about?
I have so many feelings going on right now. I mean, first off, where have you been? It's been a long time.
I know. we need to slow down. This crazy thing is nuts right now.
You feel like you're George Jetson on the...
I do a little bit.
Stop this crazy thing.
I do a little bit. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, just because, not everyone's on the You Only Live Once Jess World Tour.
It's true. We said screw it and we booked the trip, and I have absolutely zero regrets about it.
What is it?
Las Vegas Sphere.
It is.
What Las Vegas Sphere, specifically the Backstreet Boys. I lived my best life last weekend, Doug. It was amazing.
Have you come down yet?
No, still not down. Have I what? Have I washed I did wash my hands. Despite my love for the Backstreet Boys, I believe in being, sanitary. So I washed my hands.
So a hug and a high five.
A hug from Brian and a high five from Nick, and like a hand grab from Howie. So
hand grab.
Yeah, three Backstreet Boys.
Okay, just making sure that it's only a hand, because this is
just a hand. It's just a hand.
I
think I would have been escorted out of Voltaire if it wasn't just a hand.
Oh, so you grabbed their hand? Okay,
yes.
Like they grabbed yours.
No.
I thought they were excited to see you.
Well,
they should.
So Brian was excited to see me. I have video evidence. I mean, he was probably excited about the hat I had on, but I'm going to take it as he was thrilled to see me and that I was there.
Western Kentucky?
No.
He's just Kentucky?
No, Kentucky, yeah. Yeah, Kentucky.
I thought you told me Western Kentucky. I thought you were looking for a Western Kentucky hat. Absolutely
not.
Western Kentucky is a place, Jess. You seem not to believe that.
I didn't say that it wasn't a place. I'm saying I don't know that I would have purchased that hat.
Oh, you would have purchased that hat if it would have gotten you a hug with the Backstreet Boys.
It's fair. Would have purchased it, would have wore it. They just happen to like the same team that I like. So here we are. Yeah, it was great.
Who's at Kentucky now?
What's that?
Who's the coach at Kentucky now?
I was worried you were going to ask me that, and I cannot remember his name. Hang on. It's Mark Pope. That's
Mark Pope?
Mark Pope.
Pope.
Yep.
Well, he should have some authority.
He was from BYU. Yeah, I know.
Interesting last name to be from BYU.
Yep.
Anyways, back to the Backstreet Boys. So that's the beauty of this show. You get RevOps, and you have again, Jess, I told you, it's amazing I get any work done. These are the things in my head.
It's incredible.
So in your mind,
yes.
How old were you? Like if someone had come by and just said to you, how old are you while you were at Backstreet Boys, and you just responded just subconsciously, what?
15.
I mean,
wow. That show has been referred to, and I am pretty out of it, as a time machine.
The Sphere Show. The
Sphere Show, yeah. For people who went,
like what they do for the Sphere? Like what was the background?
It felt like a ride. So the show in 99 2000 was futuristic, a lot of space themes. So that's what this was. So you felt like you were on a spaceship riding through and then you would land in different terrains and different planets, and it was there was like ocean coming at you. You felt like you were moving.
Did they spray
quite a bit on you? No, they didn't. Missed opportunity. But
yeah, 3D?
It was cool. No 3D.
Were coming at you? Were you doing any of this?
No, you weren't doing any of that. None of that. The seats did vibrate, so to enhance, I guess, the experience.
So what was more impressive the fact that the Backstreet Boys are still alive. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, look at that. You got your hat in the background. I see the
I
hat.
do. It's my lucky hat now. See? It's my lucky hat.
So what was more impressive, the Backstreet Boys or the Sphere?
Probably the Sphere. I mean, the Sphere is pretty,
Wow.
yeah. I think, like, here's the thing. I've seen them enough times. Like, I knew what that was. So I had high expectations of the performance because I just saw them 2 years ago. They sounded better than they've sounded in a long time. So I don't know what they've done. I don't know if that's just the Sphere or them,
That's the Sphere.
but
I've heard
you can't describe it unless you've been there. Like it is truly an indescribable experience. So that blew, like it elevated it to where the show itself like blew me away. Yeah.
So it is as immersive as they say.
Yep. And their team fully utilized the space. Like I said, it was like being on a ride for 2 hours.
So there's some bad Las Vegas news for you. Or at least that's what I heard.
What are we talking about? Kelly Clarkson?
Yeah.
So she's canceled August. We're not supposed to go till September. Or I'm sorry, we're not supposed to go until November. We're not supposed to go. She canceled the rest of, so she was there in August and then taking a break and is back in November. So we're going in November. Though I did tell my friends, because this is the second section of her residency in August that she's canceled. I did tell them to make sure that they get a refundable flight when they book their flights, because I'm not optimistic. At least Backstreet Boys didn't cancel. Like that would have been the devastating one. I'm excited to see Kelly Clarkson, but not like I was.
When does the Backstreet Boys end their residency?
End of August. So they've got 3 more weekends. Yeah.
And then it's the Wizard of Oz.
And then it's the Wizard of Oz thing. Yeah. And then the Eagles come back. I saw that. The Eagles go back.
Yeah. You know, I'm trying to find a reason to go, and the Eagles just aren't enough.
So this is my husband. My husband would love to go. Would not have sat through Backstreet Boys, I don't think.
I don't think I could have. I think I thought about it. Would I have tried? I probably would have tried.
So he has the same problem as you. None of the bands, he's like, I just don't know that I like it enough to justify the flight and the ticket to the show and the hotel and all of it.
My regret was U2.
Yeah.
I think, and like seeing U2, and I heard that was just absolutely trippy.
Yeah.
But like I heard, you didn't know where the stage was at points in the show. That's how immersive it was.
I can believe that. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, so Jess living her best life, back from the Sphere.
It was an amazing weekend.
What was going on the outside of the Sphere while you were there?
What do you mean? What was going on the outside?
Usually they have all kinds of like things going on, and like the outside of the Sphere is all LED too.
Oh, so they had. So it was mostly like they would have animations that were going, and then they'd have like the poster of the show kind of.
Do they have
showing on it?
Eyeball?
I did see the eyeball. I saw the giant smiley face. Yeah.
You know what would be cool is if they showed the show while the show was going on the outside.
That actually would be pretty cool. They're not going to do that because they want you to pay for tickets. But that would be pretty cool.
All right, Jess, we're not here to talk about the Backstreet Boys.
We are not, as much as I could for another 2 hours. No, we're here to talk about hiring salespeople, Doug. I know you're like thrilled to talk about this topic.
Hiring sales, I love talking about hiring salespeople. I think sales hires are amongst the hardest hire in the hiring universe. So
why are they amongst the hardest hires?
You know, every sales job is different. The context of the sales job is different. The nature of what the predictors for success. I think when you get to a certain level and scale, and you've got product market fit, it becomes less risky. But that's because the system takes over.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just so much variance in the role that And the conditions where most people are when they're hiring salespeople, where most businesses are when they're hiring salespeople, it's a mission critical position. You're putting someone out in the market. So they not only have an impact on the team internally, they have an impact on you externally. Like, so, like if you mishired your accounts receivable clerk, they didn't talk to 100 people.
Right. Well, maybe they did, but not prospects.
Correct.
So what are the most common misconceptions about hiring salespeople?
I mean, probably the biggest misconception is that the key to fixing a sales problem or the key to fixing a hiring salespeople is the means increasing sales. Hey, we want to increase sales. Let's go hire a salesperson. There's an aspect of, and I have said, if you need to increase sales, the first thing to do is not to hire a salesperson. That's not always true.
Okay.
If you're small, if you have no salespeople, probably to one or two salespeople, there is an element where you might need that role.
Right. Because
you don't have the capacity to do the things that need to be done to increase sales. But there's this conception that I'm going to hire a salesperson. They're going to come in, they're going to pick up the phone, they're going to know who to call, they're going to make the calls, they're going to be greeted warmly and quickly. And the other thing too is you've got to take into account there's two ramp ups. Right? There's ramping up the salesperson, and ramping up a salesperson is not easy. It takes, you want to talk about onboarding, your accountants, your operations people, et cetera, they need to know the process. They need to know how things work. Right. But there's not a whole new language, responsible for translating that. They're experts working with experts. Just getting a salesperson to really understand your messaging and to be able to go to market with the message and to run a good, sales call is challenging. By the way, one of the challenges too that you have when you're hiring a salesperson is if you're hiring somebody who is successful in sales, they're getting paid typically at a rate that you can't justify until they're successful. So you've got to go.
Right.
So you've got to account for the ramp up to the salesperson, and then you've got to account for what your sales cycle is.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Right. So if it takes me 3 to 6 months to ramp up, and my sales cycle is 3 to 6 months, you're 6 to 12 months before you have real sales at-bats. And by the way, 3-month ramp ups and 3-month sales cycles, truly 3-month sales cycles. Again, unless, if you're hiring a salesperson to increase sales, you've got to go through those 2 ramps.
Right.
And a 3-month sales cycle ramp from a proactive sales cycle, that's a pretty short ramp, which means you're talking about, you're a low ACV, high volume sale typically.
Yep.
I mean, it's not unusual that we see real sales cycle times being 12 to 18 months.
Similar question, but I'm going to change it slightly. What are the biggest mistakes that companies make when hiring salespeople?
Wow, there's a lot. I mean, the biggest mistake, they haven't defined the role clearly enough, and they don't have a clear enough sales process in place. I mean, the number one reason that sales hires fail isn't because of the person. The number one reason for the mishire isn't the person. There's a whole profile. The problem with where I see, and again, this is not true always. If you look at the best, they don't do this, but if you look at the average, they do. We tend to start the search for a salesperson when we need that salesperson.
Yeah, it's
like going to the grocery store when you're hungry. Yeah, the biggest mistake is that you haven't really built the position. You're relying on someone to come in and figure the whole process out. By the way, you'll see that in some job descriptions. It's like, the salesperson should not be figuring out the sales process.
Yeah. So when you say clearly defined role, you mean clearly defined process? Well, are those two different things?
I think you need to have a clear sales process in place. What is your customer acquisition process?
Yep.
Right. This is why, I mean, hiring sales is a great RevOps discipline. I mean, it fits right in, it's understanding the process, the person, the technology, where do they all blend together? So, what is that process? Different processes are going to play to different strengths better. That process leads to the profile.
Mm-hmm.
A very clear candidate profile is that's probably the most important thing.
How has sales hiring changed in the past few years?
The sales role is undergoing change. I don't know that hiring salespeople has changed. I mean, there are fewer people. There's a graying of sales. So I actually hadn't planned on talking about this, but your question prompts it. There's a graying of the sales world. There's this really interesting gap. So sales for years was something that you were more likely to fall into than to seek out and pursue. So you kind of, and that's where so much of the lone wolf salesperson came from, is that people ended up in sales and everyone kind of figured it out as they went along and did this. And as unemployment came down, more people got more education, et cetera. They weren't going into sales like they were. Then you had the processization, new word, of the sales process. That's where the SDR became super and building up in it. So you have this gap. You have an awful lot of sales talent that are retiring, and there's no real clarity or build. If you look at manufacturing, distribution, field sales, I think what's happened is selling used to be done in person all the time. Now that in person is more of a guiding and facilitating element. So I think the talent approach and what's needed to be successful has changed. I think the SDR role is going through a level of change, and it'll be interesting to see if my prediction comes true. I think it will. I think it'll be a lot of disruption, which is that right now we put our best talent at the end. And I actually think with the nature of how AI is impacting things, how, inside sales has become a dominant, like the SaaSification of selling has moved people from outside roles to inside roles, from being in the field to being behind a desk.
Right.
Which reduces the flexibility of the interaction.
Yep.
Right? Though it's important to remember, there's still a lot of sales that happen as he was not my sales manager, but he was a sales manager where I worked, like to say. He said, we're in B2B sales, but it's not the B2B that everyone talks about. It's belly to belly. That was his definition of B2B sales.
Right.
Which is, person to person, shaking hands, walking the floor, doing those things, understanding, having empathy. So I think the nature of, the complexity, and salespeople have always had to deal with a lot of complexity. I think the level of complexity and what's needed to be a sales, like it every day it's becoming more important that you're less salesperson and more business person who sells.
Yep.
So acumen, understanding a business, being able to have cogent conversations, advise, it's all of those things I think have become more important. So it's really where selling has changed in kind. I think the underlying hiring process it's more been a change in degree.
Okay.
I mean, the things that enabled you to hire, I'm looking at something that I put together in 2004 when we used to do a lot of advising people and helping them hire salespeople, kind of put that hiring process together. We used to call it the talent advantage. And the process is still the same. Assess the current team and current needs, clearly define the desired results for the position, develop your candidate profile, develop what is your hiring process and recruitment plan going to be, interview and test the candidate, make hiring decision, implement training and integration program, right? That's still, you follow those 7 steps. I'm actually looking at an ebook that I wrote back then, and it still applies. The Talent Advantage Handbook. It's still, it's amazing how on point we were ahead of our time, Jess.
All right, let's talk about interviewing. So did you have thoughts you want to share? I have a couple of questions for you on interviewing, but
no questions.
What are the most predictive interview questions for hiring a successful salesperson, for finding the right person?
What are the most predictive? Well, you're not allowed to ask me questions I don't have answers for. That's not fair. I don't know that there's any question that's. I would say the more. I mean, there's 2 things that are going to predict that are going to be predictive. What have they done in the past? Mm-hmm. So what are the behaviors that show that whatever behaviors are needed are going to apply? I'm sorry, 3 things. The context of where they did that. Mm-hmm. And I would say it's less that there's a predictive question, ask this question, get this, and then this answer means that. It's more, what are the questions that they ask? Like, one of the troubles and challenges in hiring salespeople and why it's so hard is in so many ways, the interview is as good as it gets with that salesperson. Without development and other things, what you're seeing is as good as it gets. Yeah. But the interview is a sales process.
Right.
And by the way, so if they come into the sales process, if they come into the interview and we do, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this.
Right.
They're going to we do their way in sales. Or as a friend of mine coined, we're going to we do. And so it's more, how do they handle themselves in the interview? How do they ask questions? I mean, I'll tell you one thing is, how many follow-up questions do they ask? If they're not asking follow-up questions in the interview, they're not going to ask follow-up questions. By the way, if they don't ask you a lot of questions, they're not going to ask many questions. I mean, they're probably going to ask, you're going to get a fraction of what they are. So, one of the things, if you want to be able to say, I want to see how they do the role, you're seeing it. Right? One of the tricks that I used to do I still do it when we help people hire salespeople. It's not unusual still where someone says, hey, I've got a candidate that I'm thinking of hiring. Is it okay if I have them talk to you and I get your perspective? And I say, yes, I'm happy to do that. I learned I have to warn our contact that I'm going to do something in the process. And that is, I always tell them, ask them to reach out to me directly. Don't do a mutual introductory email.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm going to ignore their requests at least the first couple times that they reach out.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know you did. I knew you asked.
Yeah. So I want to see how do they introduce themselves?
Yep.
Right. Now I will tell you, I have violated that rule sometimes when they craft a really good introduction.
Yeah.
Like when they really leverage it and they pull out, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I was in the conversation. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, I'm going to reward that with a quicker response. But I don't respond quickly because there's 2 things I want to see happen. One is, how do they respond when they're not getting response? Right. By the way, their customer's going to not respond to them. The other thing that I want to do in an interview situation with the salesperson is I want to see, how are they going to respond? How do they deal with things when they're frustrated? Right now, I want to be clear here. I don't do this on first interviews. I'm not suggesting you do this on the first interview with somebody. But what I am saying is, what you want to do is recreate the environment as best as possible that they're going to operate in to see how they behave. Another element I want to see is, how much are they looking to give me the answers that they think I'm looking for?
Yep.
Versus, providing that, if they don't challenge me in the interview, they're not going to challenge the customer. Like, this person's great and they're going to be a great challenger seller. Okay, well, they didn't really challenge me. If they don't ask questions that make you a little bit uncomfortable, they're not going to ask questions that make customers uncomfortable. So I learn a whole lot more about a sales candidate when they're leading the interview than when I am.
That's clearly a negative indicator if you're the one that's leading the interview for you.
Yeah, because I don't really learn that much.
Right.
I mean, that's the problem I have with interviewing in general is, and especially in today's world, it's who asked their GPT the best prompts.
It's true. It's true.
I mean, we see it in we're hiring, we're recruiting a couple of roles right now, and you see how much AI and GPTs have changed.
Yep. So you went over some of the traits there, but what are the most important traits that you're looking for in an interview? So like I keyed on curiosity, the ability to challenge. What are some of the important traits for a salesperson?
Curiosity, command. Can they control the conversation? Can they lead? What's their pace? Coachability.
How do you interview for coachability?
Coach them. I had an interview. I was interviewing at Merrill Lynch, and it was a friend of mine who was recruiting me. So the sales manager made it very clear. He said, Doug, Lee loves you. So my job is to figure out everything that's wrong with you. It's like, that's not going to be very hard. There's plenty wrong with me.
Yeah.
And this was back in the day, and I thought I was being, when I was stylish and all that. And so I wore my, I had a blue shirt with a bluish tie. So it was blue on blue. Mm-hmm. And it was a hand painted tie. It was the Seattle Space Needle. It was at the time my favorite tie. And I'll never forget we're 2/3 of the way through the interview. And Mike says to me, he says, coachability's super important here, et cetera. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to tell you, I wouldn't be caught dead in that tie. What went through my head was, that's a little bit harsh. I didn't even remember what tie I was wearing. And I looked down and I said, oh, okay. Really? What? Why is that? Mm-hmm. And they said, okay, I was testing you. I'm not suggesting you do it the way Mike did it. But he said, I was just testing you. He said, the truth is, it's a nice tie. And if I'm out with my friends, I might wear something like that. But I would never wear it here. And he said, and the reason for that is we don't dress for our friends here. We dress for our clients. And our client is a, and that's why we wear white shirts and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And he said, and so what he wanted to do, by the way, I interviewed, the best way to interview is when you don't need the job. So I was interviewing them as much as they were interviewing me.
Right.
So I was probably a little cocky, a little arrogant. So he was, okay, how do I take being put in my place? And I responded to it in an open manner. And by the way, the next time I showed up for an interview, you know what I was wearing?
White shirt,
conservative tie, et cetera. So there's two things that I'll do in an interview. If I like the candidate and I want to, don't tell me you're coachable. First off, give me examples of when you were coached.
Right. Yeah.
Give me examples of when you were coached about things that you didn't like, but I'll coach. I'll give them some direct feedback, and then I'll watch in the next interview, how do they apply what I told them? And so I think that's the other thing. I think what you've got to do is you've got to see how are they interviewing, that interview is a sales process. How are they managing that process? The other component is they create context.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's probably, I don't think I've ever said this before, but I think that's probably, if you take a look at the best salespeople, and I mean the people, not the best salespeople in the way that we think of sales, the best advisors.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think a great salesperson is a great advisor. But the greatest advisors, what they do better than anybody else is they create context. Yeah,
I like that. Another piece I was curious about that I want to get your take on how you interview for is metrics, and should metrics be brought up in the interview? How do those guide you in making your decision? What metrics matter for hiring a salesperson?
I think you need to know what metrics are going to matter for that role. Is this an early sales stage role where they're going to be doing a lot of outbound? That's going to be a lot of calls, a lot of blind. Is it more of a full field sales role? What is the, one of the biggest mistakes that I made was I hired somebody who was good in a high velocity sale for what we were doing, which was a very low velocity sale. He got everything right. He could just never get used to the rhythm. And as a result, he failed, and it was a mishire. And it was a big mishire.
Yeah.
So I think, you need to understand those metrics. I think you need to talk about those metrics. You need to talk about where, and, look to see what are the things that are indicative of someone who's going to do the work that's going to lead to those metrics. I think you need to know where in somebody's career arc those metrics are most likely to apply, so that you're matching that, what the skill level is to move those metrics. I think you also need to know what is it that you're doing to contribute to the environment so that those metrics are achievable. So I think it's a two-way street that goes into the candidate profile.
Yep. How do you feel about role-playing scenarios in sales interviews? Do you like them? Do you think they're effective?
They can be. I think that they're often not effective. I mean, the first thing I would say is I think the interview is a role play.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you kind of said this is a sales process, right? So
right. So when you understand that, but yeah, I'll role play and say I'm probably less likely to do this on an early interview. It's probably more something I'll do in a later interview. So walk me through your process to generate a first meeting. So I'll do this. I'll pick up that call. Okay, what does that call sound like? Right, and then I'll just I'll respond to them like I'm a prospect. Like I won't even necessarily tell them that we're role playing. Right. And what I'm looking for is how does somebody respond? Right. If you're only going to be able to respond to it in an avenue of when I'm thinking about it, it's like, I don't role play, sell me this pen.
Right. So you prefer kind of a more organic approach to a mock, to like a staged mock scenario.
Correct. Because what I want is all of the, I want it to be as natural as possible.
Makes sense. What's the difference between hiring for transactional sales versus enterprise roles? Like what are you looking for differently?
I think that there are many enterprise roles that are transactional. So I think the question is really what's the difference between hiring for a transactional role versus a more strategic sale?
Right. Yeah.
Which is a large, complex sale. I think intelligence. I think storytelling.
You need those for strategic. Yes. Okay.
Yes. I think, transactional is going to be more high volume. It's going to be more rinse and repeat, do it again and again and again. A transactional role is typically going to be more of a individual contributor role. You're not going to be intermixing between and betwixt. So like one of my favorite questions to ask in an interview when we're looking to hire somebody who's either out in the field all the time, more transactional, et cetera, we really value, I'm oversimplifying this, but we really value teamwork here. How do you feel about teamwork? Right. And what I'm looking for is someone who goes, look, hey, I value a team. Right. And I think, you're only as successful as your team, but I got to tell you, I'm at my best when I'm on my own.
Right.
Right. And again, I'm drawing the, and those are examples of how, like, one of the, I learned this from an advisor of mine years ago that one of the mistakes we make interviewing is we give the answers away in our interview, in our questions.
Yeah.
Right. We use content here a lot. How do you use content?
Yeah.
Right. And then, okay. By the way, you're a salesperson. Real quickly, make it up. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. And that's why what they're saying matters a whole lot less than what they're asking.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. In your mind, should the approach differ if you're hiring for, SaaS sales versus a more traditional B2B sales role? Or does that kind of fall into the transactional versus strategic?
It's a little bit of the transactional versus the strategic. I think the nature of how SaaS sales works, and it, in a lot of ways it's more, it's software as a service, but what it really, what another word for software as a service is? Product.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the difference between a product salesperson and a services salesperson. product sale, again, it comes down to what the underlying sales process is. Is it more rinse and repeat? Is it more, can you come and do this? Like I would be able to do SaaS sales. I could sell for a lot of the partner companies that we sell for. I would be able to put up good numbers. The place where I would struggle personally is, I mean, I've got some friends who sell for SaaS companies. They've been selling, and I've been co-selling with them for 5 years. They're doing the same thing again and again and again for 5 years. And I'm like, I just couldn't do that. There's only so much discovery you can do when you're selling product. That's the nice thing about selling service is the discovery you're doing is crafting some of the product. It's crafting some of the solution, et cetera. So I think that ability, understanding the difference in what your sales process is, again, goes into that candidate profile. I think that, so much of what we think about as SaaS is companies that have big marketing engines in place. By the way, that's another big mistake. A friend of yours made this mistake, saw somebody who was super successful at a known brand.
Yep.
And was like, oh my God, they're crushing it at big brand.
Yeah.
They're crushing here. I'm like, no, that's not, it's the opposite. You need to find out, when's the last time they reached out to somebody who's never heard of their company.
Right.
So again, that's kind of where those, you've got to know yourself as much as you've got to know the right candidate to pick. Your go-to-market message and your market motions, they don't matter when you're hiring your plant manager. They don't matter when you're hiring, operations people. They don't matter when you're hiring finance people. They matter tremendously and change the hiring pool when you're talking about hiring salespeople. They probably matter a little bit less in marketing because you control more of the inputs.
Right.
Sales, sales is best defined by the great philosopher Mike Tyson. Right. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. It's what happens after the first unexpected thing happens that matters. And that's why that curiosity, command, creating context, coachability matters so much in hiring.
Let's talk about cultural fit a little bit. How important is that? How do you assess for it? What's the balance between culture fit and sales skills?
It depends on the type of the organization. I think for a lot of companies, the first question is, what is your culture? How much of a culture do you have?
Yeah.
I've seen companies get lost in this area of culture when in fact they don't really have a culture.
Yeah.
Or everyone has a culture. The culture's all over the place. It's kind of like, well, define that culture. I think I think a good salesperson, especially in the earlier stages of an organization, stretches the culture. Especially if you're not a sales-driven organization, i.e., if I don't have, 50, 100, and actually that's not even true because 50 to like if less than about 10 to 15% of your hires are salespeople, of your employees are salespeople, you don't really have a sales culture.
Yep.
Right. You have a different culture, which is fine. Right. Salespeople are oftentimes in places, they're not doing what everyone else is doing. So there's got to be a little bit of that, there's always going to be a little bit more of that independence, more independence minded. A good salesperson challenges. A good salesperson has command, as we've talked about. That's not an exhibit. I have a friend who's a really good trial lawyer. He's not a trial lawyer some of the time. He's a trial lawyer all of the time. Yeah. Right. It doesn't matter what you talk to him about. He's cross-examining. We're having dinner, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, you're cross-examining me. That's who he is.
Yeah.
And and so there's going to be that push there. By the way, sales and operations should push and pull each other.
Right.
Should be pushing operations to places where they're not comfortable. Operations needs to be restraining sales in a level that they're not comfortable. That push and pull, that conflict and friction, that creates energy.
Yep.
So I think that a good salesperson stretches the culture, doesn't just fit the culture.
Okay. I like that. We talked a little bit about making sure you have, defined process and the role is clearly defined. But if you're in a new market, have a new product, or don't have a clear established playbook, how do you hire but you need a salesperson? How do you hire a salesperson if you're in that situation?
Well, I don't know that I agree with the statement that you need a salesperson. I would say, what are you doing to create demand? I mean, the best time to hire a salesperson is when you've got demand coming in and you're stretching your capacity to respond to that demand. That's how you shorten your ramp time. It's like, hey, we've got leads coming in, we're having presence and we're, if we doubled our capacity, we'd be able to increase sales by 50% or something like that. That's how you shorten ramp times. So I would say, A, I don't know if that's true. B, like, is it really brand new? I mean, if so, you go through the same steps and you take swags.
Yeah.
At defining them and realize, the single most difficult hire in business is the first salesperson.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get a whole lot easier until you're at between your 5th and 10th salesperson, because at the first salesperson, you have no model for success. When you've got 5 or 10 salespeople that are doing well, it's like, find me somebody that looks like that.
Yep. Yeah.
You have that hypothesis. And by the way, that's where the mistakes happen. We jump in, we take a traditional sales hire. We don't really define what is our process. And by the way, when a salesperson fails, did they fail because of process? Did they fail because of people? Did they fail? Figuring those things out. The thing that a failed salesperson should do is they should fail forward. They should still advance what you're doing. But I think you've got to go through the same steps, whether it's your first hire or your 1,000th.
What's the impact of getting the sales hire right versus getting the sales hire wrong?
4x salary, 4x comp.
Oh, really? Okay. Mm-hmm. You did have like a straight answer on the ROI question. Wow.
How much is it costing you if the wrong person is saying the wrong thing to the right people?
Yeah.
How much time does a salesperson take? A salesperson takes up time, especially in their first 3, 6, 9 months.
Yep.
Right. What's the opportunity cost? By the way, that's one of the other aspects. The difference between a good salesperson and a great salesperson is oftentimes, 3 to 5x in economic impact.
Yeah. That's wild that it's that much.
Yeah. They're creative. It's a creative profession.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that it's not. Salespeople are creating.
And people don't think of it that way, but that is really true. Having dealt with salespeople for so long now, it is truly a creative, aspect. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to make sure we hit on before I recap takeaways?
No, the main thing is just, flip the interview. It'll have the biggest impact on your ability to hire better salespeople.
Yeah. I've got a couple of key things that from the conversation. One, making sure you're accounting for the salesperson ramp and the sales cycle time. I like talking to some of our clients about hiring salespeople. I think that does not get thought about enough. Salespeople should not be defining your sales process. So make sure you're defining that and clearly defining the role before you hire. Look at the question the salesperson asks in the interview. The interview is a sales process. Think of it that way. Like, take that approach. And then you've said this before, but the single most difficult hire in business is the first salesperson. So this is a hard thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that you probably have to interview more candidates to get to the right salesperson than any other role. If you implement a true hiring process for hiring salespeople, I think you'll see tremendous return on your efforts for hiring salespeople, and you'll be well on your way to saying no to shitty RevOps.
Till next time.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. Hiring salespeople isn't just about finding someone who can close. It's about finding someone who can learn, adapt, and represent your business the right way. Thank you so much for listening, and if Doug or Jess stirred up any thoughts or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out to hannah@liftenablement.com for any questions, thoughts, or inquiries about the show. Make sure you follow, rate, and share the episode. We've got more insights coming your way. Until then, share this with someone who would benefit from it, and just say no to shitty RevOps.